thank you all for joining us on this Friday afternoon. I'm calling to you today from the West Coast, actually, so it's morning where I am right now. And I wanted to welcome you all to our Equine Welfare Data Collective participant roundtable. And we haven't done one of these in a while, thanks to COVID. So today we'll kind of start off with a little refresher of maybe why we're all here. And then we'll jump into kind of a status report of what's been going on in the EWDC. And then we'll take a little bit of a dive into the report we just released. And then we'll kind of catch up on what we have going on in the future and provide our opportunity for feedback from you all, which we always really value. So we have a couple questions we'll ask today. And I just ask that if you have thoughts that you don't get to share or ask at the end of the roundtable today, that you feel free to email us. We're always available by email. So getting into our mission, and our mission is to provide data analysis critical to understanding more about horses currently at risk and in transition, so that funding, programming, and support can be aimed appropriately, and we can all help drive positive change. And kind of the overarching goal, when we really break it down, we collect information, we analyze that information, and we provide that analysis free to the general public, for you guys, so you can all look at it and see how it's applicable not only to your own communities and your own programming, but on a wider national scale, how everything's working together as well to achieve our goal of helping horses at risk. We have multiple funders that are helping us with this. Most recently, we have the ASPCA and the Right Horse Initiative, who have always been a very strong supporter for us. So thank you guys very much. Also, the Foundation for the Horse, they've been with us since the beginning as well. And most recently this year, we got a grant from the USA Equestrian Trust, which helped us to purchase our Qualtrics software for the year. So that was really great as well. So thank you all for your support. And like we said in the beginning, we have our agenda for the day. We'll step forward into our status report so we can all kind of see where we've been at, what we've been up to for the past year, and kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what we've been planning for the future. So most notably, especially for participants, you'll notice that we started a monthly data collection. So previously when we started, we launched these kind of 2 biannual data collection periods where we would collect for the first half of the year and then the second half of the year. And that affects how our reporting goes. So when we collect for such a long period of time, that means there's a longer period of time between our reporting. So working together, we started developing a monthly data collection system, which we launched this year and has been ongoing. And we'll see a picture of what that looks like in a moment. But for the monthly data collection, this is still kind of a newer initiative where we're trying to get everyone on board. So I'll be really excited to kind of talk to you guys a little bit more about that as well. In November, some of you may have attended, we ran an animal shelter software education webinar series with a group called W Foresight. And that entire webinar series is posted on our website on the United Horse Coalition. So if your organization or any other organizations that are looking for help on how to keep digital records or move into keeping digital records, I highly recommend you guys check that out. We also worked on some strategic planning this spring. And like you'll see when we talk about today, we published our most recent report this week. And we'll also talk a little bit about our next report coming up this December. So moving into the monthly collection. For the monthly collection, this allows us to kind of see a little bit more of what's happening in real time. We haven't yet reported the monthly collection, but we're going to be moving towards that soon once we get this kind of COVID reflective report out. But I took a screenshot, you guys. This is what it looks like on our website. So if you're an organization that's hoping to participate or submit data, you'll go to the EWDC website, you'll click submit data, and you'll see the instructions up here on the left. So what you'll do is you'll want to make sure you have your EIN number, just like always. That's how we kind of link all the data together. And you'll want to complete the organization profile. And the organization profile is something you only need to do once a year at this point. And we broke it out this way to help make things a little bit more efficient. So that way you don't have to repeat questions that aren't really going to change on an annual basis. You know, your services you provide, that's not going to be something that really changes month to month. You're probably always going to be a sanctuary for the year, or doing adoptions and intakes and providing safety net services for a year period. So these kind of demographic biographical questions, we only need you to submit once a year at this point. Once you submit the org profile, you can move over to putting in the monthly data. If you still need to submit for 2020, that is possible. The link is still up. We'll be closing that soon so we can start our COVID report. And then you can click on each individual month to submit for the month. If you need help submitting monthly data, please feel free to reach out to myself, to Ashley. We're always happy to kind of talk to folks through ways to set up your records, how to answer the questions in ways that are going to keep your records manageable. That's always an important aspect. And then ways to answer the questions that allow us to analyze for the reporting. So sometimes it's kind of tempting to put in really open-ended answers, like, you know, instead of just putting in two horses, but maybe one did this and one did that. And as much as we love all of the kind of anecdotal information that come with the horses you took in that year, we still have to end up kind of piecing that out a little bit to figure out how to analyze it. So talking you guys through it is always really important and something we're always happy to do. So for strategic planning, we sat down with our steering committee and we did a little bit of a focus group, especially after when we were talking to our strategic planning coach. We had our coach kind of help us through this. We brought in some folks from outside the steering group, some participants, some welfare organizations, and kind of really sat down and asked you guys how this benefits you. How are you using the data? How are you reading through the reports? All these kinds of things that are important to how we function on a, not just a daily basis, but kind of understanding our greater mission and achieving our greater mission. So some things that came out of our strategic planning sessions and kind of are helping to shape our next moves into the future is identifying more programs nationally and even regionally that we can collaborate with to get everyone on board with not just sharing the data and the information, but understanding how to proactively use the data and information to kind of benefit at-risk horses nationally. We also are starting to look into some alternative data reporting methods. So, you know, we're a small organization. It's really just myself and Ashley and our steering committee. So in terms of data reporting, we've kept it pretty standardized for the past 3 years as we kind of get our feet under ourselves and understand the best way to get this information out there. So we're starting to look into, with our strategic plan, different ways to be reporting the data, understanding what kind of the most beneficial way to get this information out there is. On top of that, that's going to also mean increased communications. So some of you might already notice you're getting more emails from us. You might be getting more phone calls. Basically, we're stepping up our social media game and kind of really understanding and looking at all the ways we've been interacting with the community, and not just the welfare community, but kind of the horse industry at large, because you know, it's easy for us, as we're all equine welfare professionals, to understand, yes, this information is important to equine welfare, but also understanding how we get the larger industry on board with really kind of digging into this information and understanding how it's applicable, not just to themselves, but their local community as well. This also means that as we look at reporting and as we look at getting information out there, that we need to continue, and we're kind of always continuing to work on this, increasing our participant recruitment and increasing our sample size. So we have a very strong intern program. I'm sure some of you have gotten phone calls from them recently. But our interns hit the phones, I hit the email of just making sure we're contacting every organization on our list, making sure everyone's getting the information that this is out there, that we would really love for you to participate. And we're also looking at kind of targeting this recruitment a little more. So as we go on longer and have more years of more total complete years of information, we really want to make sure that we have a large enough group of organizations that have submitted data to every single time period, because that really allows us to track trends better and kind of understand what's going on big picture wise in the community and in kind of the welfare program environment as a whole. And we already talked about this a little bit, but so not just alternative data reporting, you know, we have the monthly collection, so this might mean monthly kind of data snapshots, but kind of updated reporting. So how can we update not just kind of our, you know, simple things like graphics and the way we print out things or share things on social media, but kind of trying to get creative and getting information out there, infographics, kind of bite-sized pieces, things that maybe even non-horse people can start to kind of take understanding away from. And so talking about reporting, moving on, which I think a lot of us are really here for, is talking about our most recent report. So in August, which is right now, it's, I know time, I keep joking with people, since this kind of the whole past 18 months, time feels really relative and kind of non-existent at this point. So this August, couple weeks ago, we released our report 3. And report 3 encompasses the entire year of 2019. And our first report and our second report covered 6-month chunks. And most notably, this is kind of different in that it covers 1 year. And I was actually expecting a lot more questions about, you know, what took so long? Why is it kind of a different format? Why isn't a whole year? And I think everyone's kind of understanding that COVID's had a lot of impact on everyone, and our program included. So the reason this one took so long, ideally, we like to publish data no more than 1 year after a collection period closes. So it takes several months to analyze the data, write the report, send it all out to our peer review, things like that. So ideally, you know, we would have published January to June 2019 data in January 2020. But so a couple things we noticed and why we kind of push this out is, one, organizations were taking a lot longer to submit data. And when we were speaking with organizations, you know, trying to say, you know, do this, it's really important, we got a lot of feedback like, you know, with COVID regulations, they didn't have the manpower to be submitting data. With COVID regulations, they were kind of so overwhelmed with getting everything done themselves. They didn't have their own time. Everyone's brains were just kind of mushy, I think. So sitting down and doing math and staring at a computer is really hard when our brains are all trying to function during COVID. So we extended the time period to make sure we could get a large enough sample size. So the other question is, you know, if you take the time to look at the report in full and look at the intake outcome data, you'll see we report it in a January and June chunk and a July to December chunk. And those two chunks have 2 different sample sizes. So this really is kind of 2 reports squished in one, because normally when we report, it would be just January to June or just July to December. So those are 2 different sample groups because we didn't want to keep pushing out. We didn't want to do report 3 just be January to June and then, you know, release July to December 2019 sometime in 2022. That would feel really weird. So we kind of did our best to make that really clear. But if you have any questions when you're looking at it, please definitely feel free to reach out. So moving on to our contents of our report. We always like to talk about population, and the population report in this looks a little different because, one, it's 2 separate chunks of time period, 2 separate 6-month chunks, and 2, we start reporting a new data point, and that is non-custodial services. So non-custodial services are things like hay banks, owner-requested euthanasia, veterinary assistance, behavioral training assistance, any kind of assistance you can provide an owner in need without having to take legal custody of the horse. So these are all things a lot of organizations do. And, you know, ultimately the goal is we don't necessarily all want to have to be taking custody of a horse. We don't want an owner to lose a horse if they want to keep that horse. We want to help keep horses with owners if possible. So we started trying to collect that information, and you'll see how that's reported. So looking at our population, we have the region breakdown, and inside the report, the regions are broken down on a nice map. And the total population of service providers. So nationally in our database right now, we have identified 988 nonprofits that either take custody of animals or provide some sort of service to at-risk horses, and specifically nonprofits. So of this grouping, we have our January to December, so organizations that submitted that kind of demographic information, how large their organization is, what their max capacity is, what kind of organization they are. We're calling that demographic information. So for the year, we have ranging from kind of 20 up to, or 15 up to 30% of each region have reported at the bare minimum demographic information for the year. And then for services provided, so these are intake and outcome services, these are non-custodial services, we have ranging anywhere from down to 9% in region 9 up to over 20% in region 7 and region 8. So overall, nationally, for the first half of the year, we have about a 15% reporting rate for the first half and about 12% reporting for the second half. Now, most notably, if you compare these to the other two, you'll see this is a lower sample size, and COVID really is the effect of that. Looking on the right side of the screen, you will see kind of a better description of our total population. So again, that 988 number, that's the total population of nonprofit welfare organizations that are providing services of some kind, either custodial or non-custodial. And then 274 is the number of organizations that have reported to us that they are providing non-custodial services, either in conjunction with their custodial services, or there's a lot of things out there like direct placement programs where all they do is direct placement, so they don't provide any custodial services. So 274 organizations are providing custodial services so far that we've discovered, or sorry, non-custodial services. And looking more specifically at these non-custodial services, I wanted to really dive into this today with the roundtable because these are new data points for us. And the intake outcome services, the custodial services, the reporting on that has stayed pretty steady. So if you've looked at it in the other two reports, you know, it's going to be really consistent with this report in terms of what we're seeing as results and just kind of what the information presented is. So diving into the non-custodial services, these are going to be inclusive of direct placement services. So helping owners place horses without having to take custody of them directly. So if you think of thoroughbred rehoming, full circle programs, things like that. So you're placing directly a horse from wherever it is, either an owner, sometimes these are kill pen auctions, and facilitating the placement with a new owner without having to spend any sort of funding to take custody, feed that horse, etc. In conjunction with direct placement services as a non-custodial service, we also have safety net assistance and safety net services. So these are hay banks, these are veterinary assistance, these are euthanasia and disposal assistance, any service you can provide to an owner that helps them keep their horse in custody without you having to take custody of that animal is considered a safety net service. And so we kind of piloted asking questions about that in 2019. And you'll see in the way we report, some of this information organizations don't collect either. They don't collect requests for help. They don't collect how much aid or not how much aid. We all kind of keep track of how much money we're spending, but it's hard to keep track of each individual service provided. So the first one we'll look at is the direct placement services. And this is really, you know, I don't want you to look at this and think that this is encompassing of all direct placement services nationally. This is a small sample size. This is about 21 organizations nationally. We couldn't get any data from region 6 or region 7. There's not a large number of reporting organizations that do direct placement services. This is kind of a smaller population, so it's really taking a lot of digging, and we're kind of seeing this as the first step to collecting more information about direct placement services in general. So looking at this, looking nationally, all 21 organizations that were reporting, they had over 1,000 requests to help rehome a horse, or either purchasing horses from auction on behalf of somebody else, things like that. So of those 1,000 requests, 898 were accommodated. We had over 820 horse listings. So that means not just accommodating, someone calling saying, help me rehome my horse, but either actually providing listings. So 820 were provided. Listings withdrawn. So these are people who asked for help rehoming and then either changed their mind or were able to rehome the horse on their own. 21 were withdrawn. Of that, also for these requests, we had 17 horses reported being purchased at auction, either on behalf of somebody or purchasing and directly sending to a new owner. And then 164 purchased from kill pen buyers and directly sent to a new owner. If we look, kind of dig down a little deeper and look more in depth, Region 5 in particular had 744 requests out of 2 organizations. And so the kind of deeper dive into that, those are 2 very active thoroughbred organizations who just have an astronomical amount of success with taking these listings and rehoming horses. So thinking about how successful individual direct placement programming can be. So that's over 700 horses just in one region alone who did not have to enter custody of an organization and were able to be rehomed, which is pretty fantastic to think about. In terms of looking at breeds for direct placement programs, we have kind of the thoroughbreds are the king of direct placement programs right now, but there's other breeds with full circle programs, Morgans, Arabians, things like that. So this is not, I don't want you to look at this and think, oh, this is only thoroughbreds. This is only off the track thoroughbreds. We also have mini horses in here. And in the report, we do a breakdown of breed as well. We have mini horses, quarter horses, Arabians, Morgans, kind of the whole gamut of breeds are really benefiting from direct placement programs. So we're excited to kind of continue to keep digging down into this information because this is a programming type that maybe isn't available to everyone nationally yet, but is something that could really benefit everyone. Moving further into our non-custodial services, we have safety net services. And so this is a graph I just pulled straight out of the report. And we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive into it for a moment. So safety net services, we are reporting requests for assistance, which is the blue bar, and fulfillments, which is the orange bar. So these are organizations. We have all in all over 1,000 requests for safety net services. That's kind of broken down into this graph, and over 800 fulfillments nationally. And so again, these are hay banks, these are euthanasia assistants, these are training assistants, or maybe even just trailering assistants. We're starting to break down kind of deeper into each individual one in the coming months. So kind of keep an eye on how we report this because it's going to start changing. The more data we get, we'll get more detailed about it. So we have these safety net services, and each region was able to report at least some fulfillments and requests. And most notably, some regions will look like they have an over 100% fulfillment. You might ask yourself, how is that possible? How do you fulfill over 100% of requests? And so what we do, and we talk about this in our methods, but when we get data that seems like an outlier or seems like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, what we do is we call that organization just to verify what they've submitted is correct. So anytime we got an organization that sent that they had over 100% fulfillment, diving into that, what would happen is they would get an owner who would say, listen, I have this horse and I need help. And that would go in as one request. And then on the services provided side, maybe that one horse needed veterinary care, maybe they needed hay bank assistance, and maybe they needed farrier assistance or behavioral care. So that one horse was provided 3 individual service fulfillments. So that's how that got skewed a little bit. Looking nationally, we have over an 80% fulfillment rate, and that's pretty impressive. So of 1,000 requests, 800 horses or 800 services were provided, which is really impressive to think about. So that's 800 opportunities for owners to receive help and to potentially keep a horse from having to enter the custody of an organization. It'll be really interesting to see kind of how this is affected by COVID. I'm not sure yet until we really kind of dig deeply into the data if we'll have enough to really kind of compare time period to time period, but it'll be interesting to see at the bare minimum if we're able to see a higher percentage of fulfillments in terms of owners receiving care, especially if in terms of if organizations were able to take custody or not because of either manpower issues needed to care for horses or things like that. So COVID is really kind of this interesting, variable in terms of what services are going to be affected. Looking again kind of at these non-custodial services. So one is owner requested euthanasia. And this is always one, this is can kind of be a difficult subject for people to talk about. But especially for those of us who have been in animal welfare and equine welfare for a long time, euthanasia really is a service, and the price of euthanasia and disposal for horses, and not just price, but access, can be really difficult for people to obtain. In the West, I'm actually out in Colorado right now where, things are a little cheaper and kind of more straightforward with euthanasia and disposal. And that will vary greatly compared to, say, New England, where I live year round, where the last time I had to euthanize a horse, the only services available for disposal were cremation, which is very expensive, composting, which, while not expensive, entailed kind of a fairly far travel distance to get the horse to that location, or kind of rendering is really unavailable, and burial is really limited because of kind of the dense suburban area of New England. So euthanasia and disposal can really be a gift for some owners who are having trouble accessing that service. So we're trying to understand the availability of that service through welfare organizations. And looking at that, we had 64 organizations out of over 150 report that they provide community requested euthanasia. So these are horses they're euthanizing at the request of the owner, not that are in their legal custody. So these are owners who come asking for help for the service. So 64 organizations nationally reported they provide this as a service. And we asked them, okay, so you're providing this service, what are the reasons you're getting from owners listing as them needing this service? So the reasons kind of broadly were owner age, owner health, owner relocating, owner financing. So the financial availability of the owner to provide the service or their own financial need, and comparative to equine related reasonings, which would be behavior, health, age, things of that nature. And the organizations, selected all the reasons they received, and looking at it broadly, over 50% of organizations reported at least one owner-related reason for requesting euthanasia. So at least one, at least one horse-related reason for requesting euthanasia. So over 50% of organizations are saying, we're getting horse-related owner-requested euthanasia. So the horse is elderly, the horse is in ill health, and the owner needs help, providing this horse with that service. And over 30% of organizations also or solely selected owner-related reasons. So the owner's moving, the owner's too old, needs help caring for the horse, the owner's in ill health, things of that nature. So broadly, we're seeing reporting from these 64 organizations that equine-related reasons are kind of the greatest need for owner-requested euthanasia. And the reason we're diving deeply into this is because comparing that to owner requested rehoming. So rehoming can either be through direct placement services or by taking legal custody of the horse. And we asked organizations, okay, these are the reasons. We said to ourselves, these are the reasons we're getting euthanasia requests. What are the reasons we're getting rehoming requests? So 140 organizations that reported over 4,000 requests for rehoming assistance. So they got over 4,000 horses that needed assistance for the year from January to December 2019, which averaged about 34 requests per organization annually. Over 75% of those organizations reported owner-related reasoning for rehoming. So owner finances, owner health, owner age, the owners need help. And 50% of organizations reported horse-related reasons. And again, they could select multiple reasons. So we kind of broke it down into being generally owner-related or horse-related. So comparing this to requests for assistance with euthanasia and disposal, we can kind of broadly suggest, and again, this is just a snapshot for these organizations, but in my mind, we can kind of broadly suggest that reasons owners need help with euthanasia or reasons owners need to euthanize their horse is likely mostly horse related, and reasons owners need help rehoming is likely more owner related. So taking that information as you can, how do the welfare community kind of assist our community and our individual community looks at how we provide programming and assistance. So one question I just got in the chat, which is a really good one, is why do these two numbers add up for over 100%? So these are, again, organizations could select multiple reasons for rehoming. So if an organization selected both an owner reason and a horse-related reason, that is why, because they're kind of counted in both. So some organizations selected only owner-related reasons, some organizations selected only horse-related reasons, and some organizations selected both. And again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I do have my eye on it, so I'm always happy to answer questions and make sure that we're keeping things clear for you guys. Moving on, and we're going to take a little bit of a step back before we talk about the next data point. So taking a step back to our second report, we were really excited to find that we had a large enough sample size to make a national estimate on the maximum daily capacity for horses in custody. So on any given day, there is the capacity for legal custody for welfare organizations to take legal custody of over 47,000 horses, which is a kind of huge number to think about. So at any point in time, there are 47,000 spaces for horses in need on any day. So how does that relate to how many horses can be assisted per year in custody, or how many horses are going through shelters every year? And the thing that really relates into that is length of stay. So we can't really understand, how that capacity relates into total horses helped annually without understanding how long horses are staying in those shelters or staying in the custody of organizations. So we've started collecting length of stay, and there's a couple things to note with this length of stay information. So one, we have a small sample size, especially if we're looking at the global population or the national population of over 900 organizations that are taking custody of horses. We have 64 reporting length of stay. And the thing to think about is why is that number so low? And we have such a kind of a solid number of organizations reporting max capacity and intake outcomes. So as we ask organizations to estimate their length of stay or report their length of stay, we found out that over 50% of the 200 plus reporting organizations are unable to calculate their length of stay. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. One is they don't know how, or two is it's just a really onerous kind of math issue. Three, it takes time. And again, we're all horse people. We all understand time is like really the most valuable resource we have. So sitting down and calculating an average length of stay can be really difficult for a lot of people, especially hampered by the fact that a significant amount of organizations, over 40% of organizations, are relying on paper records. So it really is a kind of a laborious number to sit down and calculate if you're going through paper records. So we're working on the data keeping, record keeping aspect of that, and kind of reaching out individually to really help organizations understand how to efficiently keep their length of stay information, because this information is really critical to understanding capacity and national capacity. So looking at organizations that reported that they are an adoption, rescue, or transition center. So 64 organizations reported that they are an adoption, rescue, or transition center. That means they take horses into custody with the intent of rehoming them and finding them new owners. Those 64 organizations reported an average 209-day length of stay. So horses coming into the care of those organizations are spending on average 209 days. For the 3 organizations that report that they're transition centers, but also operating on municipal contracts, so your county animal shelter, your state animal shelter, things like that, those organizations reported 3 of them averaged a 344-day length of stay. For the 50 organizations that reported being a rescue sanctuary combination, so this means they take horses in with the intent of rehoming them, but recognize that some might do better staying in their care indefinitely. They reported a length of stay of about 400 days. So for those 50 organizations, when they report their data, they were reporting specifically the length of stay of horses that they were intending to rehome. So they took out the horses, anybody that reported, and we called it an indefinite, sorry, there's the ambulance going by, that reported an indefinite length of stay, so a horse with no expected outcome date, were taken out of these averages. So we really wanted to only look at the numbers of horses that were intending to be rehomed. And then the final group is sanctuaries. And sanctuaries, again, take horses in with the intent of keeping them indefinitely. And while, this might be easy to say, okay, sanctuaries have an indefinite length of stay, we really wanted to get to the nitty-gritty of, so if you're taking a sanctuary horse in, how long on average is the lifespan of that horse spending in your care? And we had some people, we had some outliers that looked like someone reported 75 years, which I think the AAEP might be interested in talking to you about your care regimen, because you might have discovered the equine fountain of youth. So organizations like that, we called and kind of said, okay, so you're saying indefinitely, and then kind of drilled down deeper. So getting into these sanctuary organizations, saying, how long are these horses living with you? Like on average, how many years is their life with you? So looking at that, that's 3,041 days, which is just under 10 years. So in sanctuaries, these 27 sanctuaries are reporting that, the average lifespan of a horse in their care, they're with them for the last 10 years or so of their life, which is something to think about. So that's kind of the, as deep as we can get into report 3 in a 1-hour webinar and still be talking about other things. So I highly recommend go to the website. The link is going to be at the end of the webinar again. Check out report 3. I'm also happy to email the PDF directly to anybody. You can download the PDF from the website, but read through it and feel free to reach out to myself with any questions you have. And my email and contact information is in the report as well. We like to be as accessible as possible. So moving on from report 3, just kind of briefly chat about what we have coming up next, which is report 4. And again, we had mentioned that in our ideal life that we don't release any data more than a year after the time period closes. So we're feeling like it's really critical that we get this kind of 2020 information out to you all as quickly as possible. So now that this report 3 is published, we have immediately swung into report 4 mode, which is kind of a COVID impact report. And that's going to be coming in December 2021. And so we'll kind of be sticking our nose to the grindstone to be getting through all that information. So if you have any questions or potential questions about just even in the next couple months about what potential 2020 data may look like, you're welcome to reach out to us, and we're happy to kind of chat about kind of preliminary things we're seeing, and then you'll have certified analyzed data in December to really chew on about that. So moving on into our kind of final section, which is our participant feedback. And this is something I always really value getting responses from you guys, and we have a good amount of participants today, but if don't feel like you have to respond, if you always rather think about questions and respond by email, my email will be at the end of the webinar. But moving forward, I would just like you all to take a second to think about, and you can put your responses in the chat. But what data point would you like to see collected that isn't already being reported? So feel free to think about that. Feel free to put your question in the chat, or raise your hand and we can unmute you. And in the chat, Daryl just asked, how many organizations of the 274 are providing non-custodial services only? And Daryl, that's a great question. I should have had that prepared. Let me just look in the report very quickly. I have it pulled up. So I want to say, looking at the report, so on page 13, we get into this a little bit. We limited talking about non-custodial services, organizations that only report non-custodial services, because we didn't ask that point in particular. But you can see a breakdown of the percentage of each region on page 13, and looking nationally, so again, nationally, 274 are reporting that they provide some non-custodial services. And then some regions, so the highest reporting region with non-custodial services is region 7, where 36% of all known organizations are reporting non-custodial services provided. And then a couple other regions, we have region 2 and region 4 are both reporting over 33% of organizations. Each region has more than 20% of known organizations reporting at least some custodial services, or some non-custodial services. The non-custodial service data, I was just going to say thank you, Ashley. The non-custodial data is really new to us because we're pulling a lot of this, and I'm kicking myself because I should have put the link up, Ashley, I'm sorry. A lot of this data for non-custodial services is being pulled directly from the United Horse Coalition's Equine Resource Database, which is breaking down self-reported organizations. So as we get further, and this report 3 just had so much information to get through. So as we get further in report 4, we will be focusing out solely non-custodial data as well. So organizations, one thing we can break out from that equine resource database is specifically organizations that do non-custodial data. Good question, Daryl. Any other questions in the chat, specifically either related to things we've talked about today or data points you would like to see collected or reported, either in the next report or in future reports? And then I'll also, feel free to put that in the chat. And I've lost control of my mouse a little bit. Also asking, how do you feel like we can improve reporting? And most notably, we want to be reporting more frequently. So just jumping the gun on that, we're going to try to be reporting more frequently and getting data out faster, which is kind of the purpose of that monthly data collection as well. But if there's any other thing you can think about when you're reading our reports or hoping and wishing for the next report, how do you envision that looking, and what would kind of make it easiest for you to digest information and not just digest it, but share it with your affiliates? Because getting people to read the information and really look at it would be important. So Kim said, equine breed specific stats would help our program on speaking with supporters and finders. So Kim, that's a really great point. And in the reports, we do break down by breed for percentages of horses that are being reported. But if there's any other way you want us to break it down by breed, please definitely let us know. So the breed stats are something that I don't want to say we've struggled with, but has been kind of constantly evolving. Because as you know, identifying breed when you're taking unknown horses in can be difficult. So a lot of the breed stats are really kind of heavily influenced by known breed programs, so thoroughbred programs, quarter horse programs, things like that. So Kim, if you want us to be breaking down more than just percentages of breed, then let us know, because we can try to break it down, you know, breed by safety net programs and things like that. Daryl said she would love to learn more about successes and failures of foster networks. So as I think this is a great way to increase national capacity. And Daryl, we 100% agree with you. So we have started asking in the most recent report, what percentage, and we've started reporting this in report 3, but again, it's this kind of preliminary data. So it's not something we're like super shouting from everywhere, because it's a small sample size, and we see it as kind of a pilot question. But we have started asking what percentage of organizations are using foster care systems, and the percentage is pretty low. I'm going to pull it up right now for you, actually. So 31% of organizations are using, or sorry, I'm looking at it by size, 20% nationally of 219 organizations. This is on page 20 in the current report, in report 3. So 20% of over 200 organizations report having an active foster system. So I think Daryl, Ashley, and I would agree with you that we would love to see more organizations using foster systems. And kind of going deeper, it looks like region 10, which had 13 organizations reporting, 30% of region 10 has an active foster system, and that looks like the highest after region 5, with 24 reporting organizations had a 33% have an active foster system. We also have, and that's for organizations that are supplementing foster care. So there's they don't use foster care as their primary method of housing. There are organizations that are out there that are doing that. Heart of Phoenix is always one that comes to my mind. And we're trying to get more information on those orgs as well. But again, it's kind of preliminary as we keep spreading our fingers into the different parts of data that everybody really wants. Any other questions? Again, you can always email. I'll put my email in the chat. I have the website up on the screen as well. And my email is up on the screen as well. So again, you're always welcome to reach out to Ashley and I. Ashley, I want to stump again for the United Horse Coalition's Equine Resource Database, if you want to stick that in the chat, Ash. Because we're not only pulling data from that, kind of aggregate data. So as people submit safety net programs, we're really looking at areas that have high percentages of safety net programs and areas that have low percentages of safety net programs. But on top of just our, selfish data needs, it really is kind of turning into a critical resource. Ashley has reported that during the past year, they had over 15,000 hits on the resource database of owners looking for assistance and seeking assistance. So it really is kind of growing into this resource that owners in need are using. And if you are an organization that wants to add your services to it, please do. You can also do that through the website as well. Yes, and Julie, we're all stumping for our programs today. So Julie just put the shout out, and we did send this out in an email recently. So the American Horse Council, we're doing a program assessment survey. And so this is for the equine disease Center, horselookup.org, which is for looking up equine microchips, the United Horse Coalition, and the EWDC. We want to make sure that you are accessing services in a functional way, that are services that are intended to help you and provide you with resources are actually doing so. So if you have a moment to check your email, to follow that link to provide some feedback, that would be very appreciated. Cool. So we're kind of running at the end of our clock. So any last minute questions, feel free to put them on the chat. Otherwise, I think we will end it here. And again, you can always reach out to myself at ewdc@horsecouncil.org. Reach out to us. We have a feedback section on our website. Check out the report on the website. And again, I'm also happy to send you a PDF directly of the report as well. And if any of you are going to be at Equine Affair in November in Massachusetts, Ashley and I will be there giving a presentation.
Okay, Emily, are you ready to wrap up?
I think so.
Okay, thank you. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thanks all.